Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Taiwa, a again physical therapist, former athlete, and I have with me here today my wonderful former teammate, Brittany Conley, and a good friend of mine. We both played at Mizzou, and we both happened to be at Mizzou completing our graduate programs. So I had the opportunity to see this young, beautiful lady do her pimp walk as she was recovering from her Achilles tendon rupture. So you are going to get the insights of everything that she experienced leading up to her surgery, as well as some helpful rehab considerations. So welcome, Brittany. Thank you again for taking the time to do this interview.
Hey, Tyrell.
Now, Brittany, can you just take me back to the year that you injured your Achilles tendon, and what exactly were you doing?
So I get to 2017, second semester, so it was in March. We began intramural soccer, and everyone in the program, of course, knew that I played soccer. So they begged me, wanted me to play, which I was like, okay, I think I could handle, NBA students that don't know a lick about soccer. So I believe, and this is very embarrassing, I believe it was the first game, and it may have been like 2 minutes into the game. I was dribbling, and I went to go pass the ball across the field long, because I saw a guy running on the other side of the field, and it's like I just fell out of nowhere. And it felt like someone had kicked me in the back of the foot. So I'm turning around, looking around, like wanting to scream at somebody like, hey, why would you do that? If there was a referee, like that would be a yellow. No one was around me. But I was still adamant, like, no, somebody kicked me. So the feeling I had after it was a very interesting feeling. It felt like my foot was, I don't know how to explain it. This may sound crazy. My foot was going further, like deep into the ground. I think one thing that messed me up, the trainers that were out there, they were in the program. So they were just kind of out there to help. They weren't like certified, I guess, or like they weren't actual trainers. They were learning. And
when they were on the field, I know you said they were learning. Did they do any kind of testing to see?
A girl came up and she was helping, and I'm like, I explained everything to her. I was like, it felt like someone kicked me, blah, blah, blah. And she thought it was a cramp. And I told her, I don't think it's a cramp. And she's like, okay, well, let's just try to stretch it. And I really believe that made it worse because it hurt really bad.
Like you stated, the common complaint is you feel like you hear a pop, or sometimes you feel like someone kicked this out of you, right? And that's exactly what you felt. And a lot of the times when that happens, moving that foot is really stretching it out. But the test that they commonly complete, they kind of squeeze the calf to see if there's any kind of action. And if there's not, commonly that, but unfortunately that wasn't in your case. But I am very curious, what was your pain level like on the field? Were you able to get up and walk?
A limp, of course. I was able to put a little bit of pressure, and I think maybe some adrenaline or something kicked in at that point when I was walking off the field. I kind of sat on the side for the rest of the half, but at one point it just started to it was like pounding. And it wasn't necessarily painful at that moment, but it was just kind of like maybe like numbing or just something. It was just pounding. So I went to leave, and I actually walked
At least about 50 feet or so.
Up a hill.
Wow.
So when I tell you, when I was walking up that hill, it started hurting so bad that I had to walk with my bad foot, it was my right foot. Mm-hmm. That was bad. I had to walk with that one in front because I had to keep it like at an angle. Mm-hmm. And when I got home after driving, I broke down, and the pain just really hit once I got home.
How long did it take you to get in to see a doctor?
Next day, I was in a doctor's office. And honestly, that day I scheduled my surgery.
Wow, pretty quick. Surgery is typically performed for younger individuals that are fairly active, that they have the ability to heal. Now, for you in your instance, literally being able to get that scheduled the next day was pretty good. Did you have an option regarding to doing the surgery in a month, or was your surgeon like, you need to do this as soon as possible?
So he left it up to me, but he strongly advised, just like you said, because I'm active, because he knows I'll be working out, be more active, and I have, some more years to be on my feet. He said the surgery was the go-to. He said if I wait any longer, I'm just gonna have to have it heal on its own, and there's not gonna be as much movement.
So are you telling me you had surgery within a week of your injury?
So I believe it happened around the 7th or the 8th of March.
Mm-hmm.
I went into my doctor's appointment on the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to happen on the 7th or the 6th. And then I had my actual surgery on the 15th.
And if you are maybe thinking, okay, doctor says I need to have this surgery, but you're thinking about waiting, realize that it's critically important to have the surgery as soon as possible in the safe manner, because if you let it go longer, that can lead to, sorry, don't judge me, but this is my Achilles tendon. I've been eating. If you wait longer, typically the Achilles tendon can kind of come off and retract higher up in your leg. So that's why a lot of surgeons would like to get it done as soon as possible, so that prevents any further surgical procedures. Now, you did say you have your surgical report with you. Did they have to do any kind of tendon transfer, or did they simply stitch your Achilles tendon back together?
You could feel exactly the part where it had gone up into my my calf, mm-hmm. and then where it was supposed to be. So like there was like a hole or something that you could feel. So he said mine was like pretty much a clean tear or something. Right. So he was able to just put it all back together.
So yeah, in her case, she had it addressed early, and they simply were able to put that tendon back into place. After surgery, how did you do getting around weight bearing wise? Did your doctor have you non-weight bearing or putting weight on that leg?
Mm-hmm. After surgery, I was in a big white cast. At least no longer than 2 weeks, I don't think.
Was it a splint or a hard cast?
It was a hard cast.
Okay.
So there was no movement pretty much during that time. Once I was out of the splint, I was in a long boot, and I was on a little scooter. And then after the long boot, I was in that for a while. And after that, when I was graduated to small boot.
So by 2 months, were you able to walk normal in the boot?
In the actual boot, he included these like inserts, little white things. Mm-hmm. So I started off with 2, so it was like bigger, thicker, and then I graduated down to 1. So I think it took me to actually be able to walk comfortably in the boot and be fine. 2 months, maybe even 3, to really like get comfortable with just walking on the boot.
And I'm so glad that you touched upon the heel lift. So I'm gonna go back because back then, a couple years ago, after you injure your Achilles tendon, it's common to put the leg in a plaster cast for a couple weeks, have it immobilized. But as they have found in 2020, they have been starting to maybe have you in a splint, but still able to move it a little bit, because they're finding that those that are able to do a little bit of movement, that has shown to improve less sick days, being able to return back to work, but also being able to walk sooner compared to those that were non-weight bearing in like a plaster cast. But in her case, she had hers many years ago, not Duncan ages, but it's still been quite a while. And then you touched upon the heel lift. So tell us a little bit about what the purpose of the heel lift was.
From what I understand, it's to lessen the pressure on your heels. So, but you still get that walking practice or feeling.
Exactly. And as I mentioned in my previous video, if you missed it, go ahead and dance your way to that video. But a lot of surgeons have patients in heel lifts. So for example, I have a patient that has started with 6 heel lifts, and they gradually removed one week by week. But essentially, like she stated, it helps to still promote healing, but prevents too much tension along that tendon while it's healing. So again, like we talked about before, it really is a gradual process. And then when we're talking about getting out of the boot to wearing a shoe, did you have a heel lift in your shoe or anything like that?
I think I did it wrong. So once I got out of the completely and I was in done with the rehab and like out of it, I was moving back home. So there was a lot going on, but I was moving back home and I remember getting out of bed one day and it felt like the bottom of my foot was ripping or something was wrong with the bottom of my foot and I didn't know what it was. And it was because of the shoes I was wearing. There was no, I don't know, some lady described it when I went to go get some shoes to help out.
Mhm.
But because of the surgery, I needed something with a little bit more, what is
Support
it?
at the heel to kind of.
Yeah, like a little more, because all my shoes were flat pretty much. So yeah, I didn't wear anything in my shoes. I wore a lot of like sandals and like flat shoes, and like whenever I was walking around the house or anything, I didn't wear any like house shoes to like help. So I had to get all these like, I don't know, these like therapeutic like house shoes, everything to help out because it had gotten really bad.
Let's move to the physical therapy aspect because obviously that's a huge portion of your rehab is really just getting things moving. How soon did you start physical therapy?
It was May 16th when my doctor wrote like the prescription. So around that time is when I started rehab.
And initially in rehab, do you remember what the focus was on?
So at the beginning, it was, from what I understand, it's just working on the movement. So I would get out of the boot and there was no pressure on it, nothing like that. It was just working on movement, if I remember correctly, just to get it kind of
Yeah.
going.
Are there certain ranges that they try to educate you on not stretching to prevent any stretching of that tendon that you can recall?
I can.
Okay.
I'm sure it was there. Maybe it's in
And that's
these
okay. But commonly, they don't want you to be moving that foot. And I'm going to bring my candy Achilles. But they
places.
don't want you to be moving the foot. Ooh, that dropped. But they don't want you to be moving the foot past neutral. So they never want you doing this because that essentially would stretch out the tendon early on. I do have to ask you because I treat a lot of patients that have this injury, but I've never personally experienced it. But initially, they seem quite hesitant. When you were just trying to do weight shifts, take a small step, what did it feel like?
It felt very um, like uh, scratchy, or and I'm sure that was the scar tissue or whatever working. Um, it just didn't feel strong. And in some ways, because you get used to the boot, it kind of feels like once you take it off, your foot is kind of not there, which is really weird thing to say,
Mhm.
but it just feels like it doesn't work.
When you were transitioning from the boot to the shoe, were you nervous at all?
Absolutely. I was planning on being in the boot for a long while.
Till I become a grandma.
I wasn't against it.
What were you most nervous about?
It's always your mind because you end up coming out stronger after surgery typically. So it's really just the mindset of getting out of that scared phase.
Now, exercises wise at home, were you pretty consistent with everything you should be doing at home?
So once I got finished with my therapy, we had gotten a bond, and she's like, "I'm so proud you graduated." Da, da, da. And then she was very honest with me, and she was like, "Well, I'm gonna, have to do I guess like a synopsis of my progress or whatever. And she was very honest and told me, I know you haven't been doing the work that you should have when you know, away from here. And she was like, just please work on it. Please try and keep doing those. But yeah, I definitely wasn't doing what I needed to outside of the therapy sessions. And I think it really hindered me getting back to not even being able to do the things I could do before, because I can, but it's the mental part of it. It's always that. And if I were to actually work on that, do the calf lifts, do all the different things she told me to do, I would have been way more confident.
Once you were done with therapy, supposedly, when did you feel comfortable even like jogging, running, despite you not keeping up with all your exercises?
Once I was done with therapy and I left to go home, I went on a trip about a month later, a month and a half later, maybe. And I was still, I mean, I was working, I was doing a little bit more exercises and I was getting a little bit more comfortable. And I went on a trip to Miami with some friends. And this was when I could actually start wearing, I asked my doctor, I was like, when can I start wearing heels? And he was like, this is when you can start wearing heels.
And what time frame was that?
Huh?
And what time frame was that? Was that after 6 months? You remember?
I think it was 6 months.
You went right after 6 months. Did it feel pretty good? Did you have any pain? Did you notice weakness at all?
No, I'm telling you, it felt stronger than my good one. Like it felt fine. I was like, wow, I've been holding out.
Pretty awesome. So that's quite interesting that you say that, because there are a good amount of people that have strength deficits up to a year compared to their good leg, just because you can still continue to build strength even after a year, which is why your therapist did an exceptional job telling you, hey, you got to keep up with this. But real cool that you feel pretty good now. So just doing your day-to-day activities, going to play soccer if you still play, do you even notice that it bothers you?
No, it doesn't really bother me. I still have a little bit of scar tissue. Is that the term?
Does it feel pretty thicker compared to the other tendons?
Oh, it's like night and day. It really makes me sad. It's really night and day.
I'm curious because I have to ask this for even one of my patients. They're always asking, well, is my calf size going to be the same again compared to my good one? Is your calf size about the same?
It's not, right, because I don't do like calf raises. I'm not like a workout type of person. So my calves both are kind of depleted and
Complete athlete, guys.
And it is smaller. Like it doesn't have that definition, you know, the calf has that little, like my other one has a little, and this one's kind of nothing. So, but I mean, if I were to work out, if I were to do the things that would get my calf back, I'm sure it would be fine.
So I have to end with this because I know that there are some people watching that may be going into this surgery, or some that may be in the middle of this whole rehab. Can you just give us some helpful tips and advice of things that they could do to be sure that they have a good recovery?
I guess getting out of surgery, that's one thing. I wish I would have had more information. If you get the hard cast that I got, have a chair to sit in the shower. And this may be too much information, and I'm sorry if it is. Stool softener, because that was a very painful process with the medicine. Those are my biggest things for after surgery.
We got after surgery, so now we're gonna get fast forward past surgery into the rehab.
So rehab, number one thing, do the exercises, knock them out, do it quick. One thing I tried to do was, because I had an office job at that point, and I tried to do exercises then, which if I would have kept that up, that probably would have been pretty a good amount. Like it would have been a good amount, and I probably wouldn't have to do a lot once I got home.
Thank you. That was really good, Brittany. You really gave us a good picture of the whole process, which I really appreciate because as a therapist, we know the rehab, but it's always great to have people like you that shares their personal experience. And I hope that you guys found it helpful. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave a comment in the box or hop onto my website.